Hello, I'm Shintaro, and I'm going to talk about combinatorial proofs and genus bounds. So in the 90s, the introduction of gauge theory into low-dimensional topology allowed many sort of previously unapproachable problems to be solved. So the most notable of these is the existence of exotic smooth structures on four manifolds. I've listed a couple of examples. So the first is very explicit, and the second is not explicit, but kind of huge. So in this talk, I'm going to be focusing more on genus bounds, which are another type of problem that we can approach using gauge theory. So genus bounds refers to, let's say we've got some embedded surface in a four manifold, and we know some information, such as its homology class. Then can we find the lower bound on its genus? So using gauge theory, here are two sort of example of like genus bound problems that have been solved. So what is gauge theory and what is a combinatorial proof that I mentioned at the start? So in gauge theory, the basic idea is that we start with our smooth manifold in the topological realm, and then we add a bunch of stuff to it, like Hermitian bundles and metrics. And with this additional structure, we can define differential equations like Seiberg-Gudin equations and study the space of solutions to these equations. And from these solutions, we can extract invariants, and we use those invariants to go back to topology and prove stuff. So this has a couple of drawbacks. The first is that in adding a bunch of structure and then proving things, it gets very technical and difficult. Proving that everything is well-defined takes sort of hundreds of pages in the sort of the original papers. The second is that by leaving the realm of topology and proving things using differential equations, for example, we are losing a lot of the sort of visual intuition for why things might be true. The proofs don't necessarily help us understand why a result is true. It just sort of proves it. So it'd be nice to stay within the realm of topology. And that's really what a combinatorial proof is. So can we reprove these sort of gauge theoretic results in combinatorial methods? So the most famous example of this comes from Kovanov homology, which is a homology theory for knots. Rasmussen's S invariant can be used to prove the existence of exotic R4s and again the Moore conjecture. More recently, Peter Lambert Cole used trisections to reprove the symplectic Thom conjecture and something called the adjunction inequality. So the adjunction inequality, we have some embedded surface sigma in a symplectic four manifold, and we can bound its genus in terms of the first Chern class of the manifold and the homology class of the surface sigma. So how can we use trisections to prove something like this? Here is a diagram of the sort of general setup. So we've got a four manifold X, and it has three sort of sectors in the trisection, X1, X2, and X3. The sectors all meet along three-dimensional boundaries. Sort of the key fact about trisections is that the spine of the trisection, which is the boundary shown in red, green, and blue, determines the entire four manifold. Similarly, sigma shows some embedded surface, and it turns out that if sigma is in sort of a normal form, then it's also determined entirely by its intersection with the spine. So if we intersect sigma with the three-dimensional part of the trisection, that gives us links. So overall, studying a surface in this four manifold sort of reduces to studying this link inside this three-dimensional spine. So this reduces our problem into a sort of a knot theory in three dimensions question, and in three dimensions, algebraic topology rules. So in the end, we can obtain a combinatorial proof.